BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everyone. It is another Zodiac Monday, and today we're going to be talking about Zodiac Revisited by Michael F. Cole and some of his theoretical claims as well as commentary about the Zodiac Killer mystery. I learned about this one because of Drew Beeson, and first I heard him talking about Zodiac Revisited by Michael Cole on his channel, doing his show, The Zodcast. If you're not listening to that one, I highly recommend it. But also because he contacted me and asked me if I would be interested in reading the book, and I agreed to that, and I thought that this would be a good opportunity. And since I've been going through it, I need to first give the disclaimer that I'm about 2/3 done with Volume 3, so perhaps there will also be an episode that will come out in the future, like a conclusion or tying together some loose ends, or if I encounter some new material that I think is very valuable. And in this discussion here, I want to be very clear that this is not a traditional book review. This is not a simple summary. So we will be talking about some of the things that Michael Cole has written in his book, and then we will also give some responses to it, like book discussion, just talking about some of the ideas that are present. And also, when we did the last book discussion on The Second Power by Gareth Penn, I really found that it was only available to people who were very familiar with the case. Like if you were to just jump right into it, like many things on this channel, there's not a lot of introductory material. So with this one here today, I really wanted to read off a lot more of the background information. So if you're very familiar with the Zodiac Killer mystery, you might be hearing some things that seem a little bit obvious to you, or you might be hearing some things that are probably very well known, and I mean, it won't exactly be a whole lot of new material, but I wanted to include that because I felt that it just makes the entire presentation a little bit more solid. And one thing that I said during the announcement for this episode that we were saying last time is that when I purchased this book, Michael F. Cole's Zodiac Revisited Volume 3 was the #1 book on Amazon.com for the history of the Western United States. Big congratulations to Michael F. Cole and all of his success. And if you would like to follow along with his series of books on the Zodiac Killer, there are 3 volumes to this, and they are even color-coded. The first one is red, the second one is blue, and the third one is green. To look at some of the claims of Michael F. Cole, he really gets into the psychology of the case, which are the things that I like talking about, the things that I really like examining, because I really find that it's not so much about, okay, someone is saying that they have this document from the police report, like this document from the case file that states these facts, and I mean, that's a very valuable discussion, but I find that the areas that are more open to debate are looking at some theorizing about the personality of the person who was behind the murders that took place, the person who was behind the creation of the letters and the ciphers. And Michael F. Cole is someone who first and foremost puts a very large claim on the board that the Zodiac Killer is actually a much larger and much more prolific serial killer than people initially believed. And he says this because he attributes many different murders to the Zodiac. I also have to try and connect Michael Cole's theory about the Zodiac Killer to some comments that had been coming in very frequently. A lot of people had been writing things in the comments section saying that they believed the Zodiac Killer was someone who really developed a persona for the murders that took place in 1968 and 1969, the canonical crimes that had been attributed to the Zodiac Killer. But when it would come to anything else other than that, then this person is acting in a different way, when that this is just a different type of idea, that is the person is behaving in a completely different manner. It's possible all of these things about Machiavellian narcissism could be true, that you have somebody who's trying to move around the laws and guidelines of society because they feel that they are above them. All of that could be correct, but also that I guess I would say that I frequently quote Dr. Todd Grande's assessment of the Zodiac killer when he said that the Zodiac would be somebody who is very low in neuroticism, meaning that he doesn't worry about a lot of things, but also that someone who is very high in insecurity. And when you see someone who is targeting men and women together because feeling envious of the man for being with a woman and targeting the woman because of the desire to be with her, but he can't obtain that desire, or he can't fulfill that desire, excuse me. That sounds like someone who is horribly insecure. So this is someone who is very much aware of these situations in life, but also they feel that they are above the laws of society. It's like, I am smarter than everybody else, therefore I should be getting what I want, and if I'm not getting what I want, then I'm going to unleash something in a very destructive way. But also, I need to cite a previous episode that we did on this channel called The Neuroscience of Serial Killers. If you haven't heard that one yet, I highly recommend it because there's some things in there that I was discussing with a neuroscientist about, serial killers. We're just sharing some ideas. And one thing that was mentioned is that a psychopath or a sociopath uses 5% more brain activity overall than that of a normal person. 5% more brain activity. And I think that we have that in the Zodiac Killer mystery as well. Just someone who has a heightened sense of awareness, who is much more has a very sharp attention to detail, and it is entirely possible that the Zodiac Killer was a high-functioning paranoid schizophrenic, and that someone who is just very, very good at making these attempts not to get caught, or taking measures and putting them in place not to get caught. And I'm not quite sure that Michael Cole would agree with that assessment from reading his writings here, but I think that, I'm not even convinced that the Zodiac was a high-functioning paranoid schizophrenic. It's just something that I've been a little bit more open to. If you had asked me that stuff back in 2017 when I first started putting out uploads, I would have been like, no, absolutely not. A schizophrenic would be all over the map, but we do have other people like Ted Kaczynski who were high-functioning paranoid schizophrenics, and they're not completely unstable. Instead, they are much more calm, composed, and calculated, which is what a lot of people think that the Zodiac Killer would have been. Now, what I would like to do at this point is to transition away from some of the things that are purely about the psychology and go to the Zodiac Killer ciphers, because Michael Cole has a lot of things to say about the 408 cipher, and that is, of course, the first one that was mailed. It was mailed in 3 parts and sent to 3 different newspapers, the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. And because it was mailed in 3 parts, I believe that the only real trick to this one is you had to know how to put the parts in order, and I think it's the one that was mailed to the Vallejo Times-Herald that needs to come first. Like, that had to be the first one. And when you put the 3 parts in order, then it became a simple substitution cipher, and it revealed the famous solution, I like killing people because it's so much fun. It's more fun than hunting wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all. It's better than getting your rocks off with a girl, and so on. And this is another thing that I think heavily connects to the idea that a psychopath or a sociopath is using 5% more brain activity overall than that of a normal functioning person, because the Zodiac was so vocal about that man is the most dangerous animal of all, and you'll hear this all the time about how they say that the Zodiac hunted people for sport, because yes, of course, that's a direct reference to the most dangerous game, which is about hunting people for sport. But a lot of people, even back to the first news reports that I ever heard about the Zodiac Killer, were looking at the possibility of someone who is trying to prove that he is the most dangerous animal of all, that he is above other people. Machiavellian narcissism, more brain activity, heightened sense of awareness, all of this stuff is coming together. This person is trying to become the most dangerous animal of all, the top of the dominance hierarchy, and someone who thinks that they don't necessarily have to work their way to the top of the dominance hierarchy or the competence hierarchy. They want to move around them in a very destructive way. So I think all of these elements are coming together. But the things that Michael Cole has also written about the 408 cipher in this is that it goes on to say that those who I have killed will become my slaves in paradise. Or I think the first line is, I will be reborn in paradise, and those who I have killed will become my slaves. what is that? What really is that? I mean, some people think that that is from Filipino folklore. Other people think that that is actually just an underground idea that was actually somewhat popular, like the way we had alternatives to the hippies in the 1960s, like the Church of Satan, or perhaps some other smaller movements like Charles Manson and his family, that they had belief systems, or that they would talk about things that are a little bit more underground. There can be like an underground school of ideas, and that this was something that people just shared very casually. I still have to insist, I do not personally believe that the Zodiac actually thought that he could kill people and that he would be reborn in paradise and they would be his slaves. I don't personally believe that, but the piece of commentary that has been put forward by Michael Cole is actually rather interesting about this, saying that not only is this person trying to either appear delusional or maybe he was delusional himself, but it could be used as an insanity defense. That, like, say, for example, if they actually did catch the person in 1971 and they found out who was behind all of the things in the Zodiac Killer mystery, then you could just plead insanity and be like, oh, clearly my client is delusional. He thinks that he's going to kill people and he's going to die and be reborn in paradise, and those who he have killed will be his slaves. I mean, like, it's meant to be creepy, absolutely. This person is and I do have to cite Dr. Todd Grande as well for providing that line. The Zodiac either was delusional or he tried to make people think that he was delusional. And Michael Cole is definitely on page with that, but he added the additional level that if this person were ever caught, then they could plead insanity because of all of the things in the Zodiac mystery that sound bizarre, that sound like someone who is very deluded. And in many instances, I also have said that the Zodiac really had two types of personalities that have been put forward in the letters. The first thing that we can note is that it's possible that the person who was behind this didn't write all of the letters himself, that there are actually multiple letter writers. And there's this voice in the Zodiac letters that talks about, okay, I killed some people, and here's why I did it. And then there's another perp that is just begging for attention. There's someone who's like, hey, I'm really mad that people aren't wearing Zodiac buttons. Hey, I'm really upset that you're not putting my stuff on the front page of the paper. Put this in your paper, or else there will be consequences. You'll know I'm going to do something nasty. There's like this very bratty, attention-seeking type of personality that is also heavily present in the Zodiac mystery. And then there's another type of personality that is in the Zodiac Killer letters, and it is more about, I'm out of control, please stop me before I kill again. Like the person that's kind of crying for help, more or less. And I really don't even like using that terminology when talking about a serial killer, but they were like, I don't know how much longer I can go. I will have to kill again. There's like really different personalities going along all up and down. But I notice at least three different voices. And I would also want to share something just to say one more time. If you go to the channel next Halloween here on YouTube, you can hear like a reading of all of the Zodiac Killer letters and ciphers. I mean, including the 408, but I think that compilation of the Zodiac letters and the 408 cipher was done before David Ronchak and the guys, Sam Blake and Ural Van Eyck, had cracked the 340, and at the time of the publication of Michael Cole's book, the 340 still remained uncracked, and he talks about that, how the 340 has not been solved yet. But to get back to the 408 cipher, did the person who wrote that actually believe that he was going to kill people and be reborn in paradise, or instead was he actually just someone who was trying to be creepy and trying to be weird? And I think that this is in line with a lot of the things that we were saying in the last AMA, talking about obscure behavior, how about just bizarre and unconventional behavior because it fuels the dopamine surges in the brain. And I found, not only did I find the stuff in Michael Cole's book, Zodiac Revisited, but also in Gareth Penn's book, The Second Power. Like, I did like a 10-minute spiel in the last AMA on Wednesday, and you guys can always drop your questions and comments below for things you would like discussed on Wednesdays. A 10-minute little progression about just talking about how people do unconventional things because it fuels dopamine in their brain, and then is going into all of this stuff about how they can't be truly challenged. And this is one of the reasons why the Zodiac didn't give away his identity so easily. This is also one of the reasons why there are these pieces of material, and I'm going back to Michael Cole's commentary now, like, I'm going to be reborn in paradise, and those who I have killed will be my slaves. Hunting man is more fun than hunting wild game in the forest. It's better than getting your rocks off with a girl. It's not completely clear what is going on. Like, is this person delusional, or are they not? Do they actually want to hunt people for support, or is there another motivation going on? Do they actually want to recreate the most dangerous game, or what really is it all about? And I think that this ties into the claims made by Michael Cole and Gareth Penn that the person is not giving away their true agenda too easily, because even Gareth Penn was like, a lot of the things in the Zodiac Killer mystery probably have a private meaning to the killer. I mean, like, they probably have a private meaning to the person, whoever composed the letters and the ciphers, and there are some things that people just won't even figure out. There's the obvious, and then there is the stuff that you need to research a little bit more, and then there's also a private meaning that perhaps only the person who composed the letters and the ciphers would understand. And when Gareth Penn wrote that in The Second Power, it's like a private meaning that only the killer could understand. I was like, I spent 10 minutes rambling about that last Wednesday, and that's just it, though. I mean, like, one sentence. Okay, there's a private meaning that only the killer can understand. Thank you to Gareth Penn for writing that, and you can also visit our book discussion on Gareth Penn's The Second Power. But as I said, we don't really do too much introductory information in that one. So I think that there are numerous reasons about why somebody would have composed the 408 cipher in the way in which he did, but I really don't think it's just a single one. There's definitely something about withholding information, because Michael Cole even talks about this, saying that the Zodiac was a compulsive liar. And my first instinct was, well, okay, I mean, why do you accept the stuff about the Riverside murders so easily, when knowing that the Zodiac killer lied so frequently? But Michael Cole fully admits it. He's like, the Zodiac was a big liar. He said that solving the 408 cipher would reveal his identity, and to the best of our knowledge, it has not. And there is that final line of text at the bottom, which some people believe was indeed the Zodiac killer's identity is contained in that. Other people simply think that that was a mistake, that the cryptographer, the cryptologist, whoever was assembling the 408 cipher, or composing it rather, maybe assembled too. Maybe they made a mistake, and that's why there's this block of text like EBs and Bs and Rs and Os. Or Thomas Henry Horton has released a new series of videos out there, also, like, just on his show, the Stones Unturned podcast. Season 3 really talks about the possible solutions to the final line of text in the 408 cipher, saying that it's actually some type of encoded message. And some people, well, they use his method about, like, if you take the misspellings, like how there's the word man is the most dangerous animal of all. Dangerous is spelled Dangeroue, but dangerous should be spelled with an S, right? So then you can bring the E down, and then that means you can substitute the letters E and S in that final line of text, and you could say something like Robert Smith, or is one of his possible solutions. But somebody took his method even a little bit further and found one possible solution, that it says Seth meet Robert Smith at Northwest Pier 2. Like, it's actually like an instruction and a coded message telling somebody what to do. Bear in mind that we did not have internet at the time. We did not have text messages. We didn't have cell phones in 1968 and 69. So this was a way that people may have communicated. I mean, it sounds like a horribly, horribly inconvenient way to communicate to someone. Like, I mean, that's just some material that has been proposed by a different Zodiac theorist. But in regards to the 408 cipher, I think that someone is trying to sound like they are very dangerous. They're trying to sound like they are also somewhat badass. They're trying to hype themselves up and act like they are more out of control than they really are, because they want to show society that there's something to be afraid of. And also, as we said, this type of dopamine surge that comes from unconventional behavior, it is fueling their own excitement. You will hear this stuff about serial killers all the time. I kid thee not, if you go through serial killer literature, that they are doing things to fuel their own excitement, because in the brain there is this connection between the amygdala that regulates emotion, and then there's part of the brain that's right behind the eyes called the orbitofrontal cortex, and that is dealing with things like urges for urges of various sorts. So someone is feeding their urges to do things, and they do things in a destructive way because they're not dealing with any of that type of emotional backlash that a normal functioning person would. Even if they murder someone, they don't feel that emotional sense of guilt and shame and disgust and, oh no, what have I done? Instead, it fuels their excitement, and there are countless reasons about why that could happen. I recommend James Fallon's "The Psychopath Inside" to learn more about that if you would like to check out a different source. But in regards to the Zodiac killer and Michael Cole's theory, he does notice that newspapers get really pulled into this. The Zodiac is sending lots of messages to the San Francisco Chronicle. Well, why the Chronicle? And then maybe we'll deviate and send things to the San Francisco Examiner. And the third newspaper that we said that received part of the cipher, the Vallejo Times-Herald. Well, why contact newspapers at all? In our book discussion on the myth of the Zodiac Killer, we've pulled up some things about how it's actually a common practice that many people did send things like into newspapers, like letters to the editor was a much bigger thing back in the 1960s than perhaps it is today, because, as we said, the lack of electronic communication. But that's going down like someone else's theory now. The Myth of the Zodiac Killer is by Thomas Henry Horn, but he just has put forward the possibility that this was something that involved a lot of newspaper insiders, and, as we said, the myth of the Zodiac Killer, the idea that one person wrote letters taking credit for murders that he didn't commit, and in short, this becomes the foundation of the Zodiac hoax theory, and that the reason why these newspapers are contacted is people at newspapers did this stuff all the time. They would write in fake letters to the editor saying things, and just it's all just orchestrated by the newspapers to create fake news, more or less, and even they would even create fake news stories, and even you would have somebody saying that he's in China following Richard Nixon when he's actually telling lies from San Francisco. Some people actually believe that Richard Gaikowski, the Zodiac Killer suspect whom Tom Voigt has promoted for a long time, did that very thing when he was talking about being on the ground in Ireland, and that's why a lot of people believe that Richard Gaikowski couldn't have committed the Lake Herman Road murders on December 20th of 1968, because he would have been out of the country in both Ireland and Northern Ireland, crossing over into the UK side. They simply say that someone sent me that stuff. I think it was Andrew, whoever shared that stuff about Eddie and the Geik crowd, I think they was called, when they're saying that Gaikowski never owned a passport. And I mean, that falls in line with that. I'm not for saying anything one way or the other about Richard Gaikowski and his journalistic habits, but that people would say that they're in a country, whether it's Ireland or China, and they're actually in San Francisco, just pretending to be in that country, or they're writing news articles that are full of baloney. And then the Zodiac Killer was heavily fueled by that stuff, but that would involve a different type of theory. It's just, I mean, Mike, the reason I brought up the myth of the Zodiac Killer stuff is, I mean, firstly, we talk about it very frequently on the channel, but also because Michael Cole was just asking the questions about why did this perpetrator contact the San Francisco Chronicle so much? I mean, maybe he did have an insider connection there. Why did he then deviate and contact the San Francisco Examiner, and why are there some things to the Vallejo Times-Herald? Why bring in newspapers at all? And it could be that this is just something that people very frequently did. I mean, contacting newspapers and radio stations, and I mean, I don't even mean to go off into too much of a silly direction, but I was listening to Howard Stern once, and they were saying before the internet, one of the guys on the show was saying that what you would do is you would write these letters into the radio station, and then you would have to drop them in the radio station's mailbox at like 2 o'clock in the morning, because they didn't want to see that kids or teenagers were dropping these things in the box. And it's not even like a postmarked letter, but it's just like a demand that something that they wanted to be read on the radio. In short, that this is how you got attention. This is how you became a troll prior to the internet and forums and message boards and comment sections. And there's a lot of trolling in the Zodiac Killer mystery. And I hate to say that when we're looking at real murders, when people have actually lost their lives, but there is a lot of trolling. The Zodiac was a troll by every sense of the word, and it's fueled by insecurity. And this is one point where I think Todd Grande and Michael Cole and myself would all be in agreement. Like, there is an enormous amount of insecurity that is driving this. Someone may be a complete sociopath and show no human empathy and not care about other people and just really not show any regard for human life and only cares about their own urges, and then they just put on several different facades throughout their lives. But in regards to in regards to the behavior of the Zodiac Killer, you please wear Zodiac Killer buttons or just wear any type of button about the Zodiac Killer. I mean, I kind of butchered that one. The line is that please wear some nice Zodiac Killer buttons or any other button about the Zodiac Killer, or if you don't put my note in the paper, then I'm going to do something nasty. This person wanted recognition. This person wanted attention. This person also wanted things like notoriety, and he wanted some type of respect for his intelligence as well as his deviant behavior. Not only respect, but this person also wanted to be feared by many different people. And Michael Cole will get into a lot of this stuff in the book, but if you want to talk about those types of motivations, about how insecurity could be a driving factor in the Zodiac Killer mystery, I think that that is very valuable. And we will continue this discussion right after a quick message. Bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum bum bum. At this time, I would like to talk about some of the ways in which you can help Black Box Online Radio. This channel relies on your support, and the best way you can help out is just by listening to some more content. If you like what you hear, you can hit that like button, subscribe, and share with your friends on social media. But I should also say that Black Box Online Radio now has a Teespring page, and there will be some links in the description box. Please feel free to check out some of the merchandise that is available. Almost all sizes and colors are listed. So, you can also help out by going over to the Zodiac Killer channel and watching the documentary series Obsession into Darkness, parts 1, 2, and 3. I was one of the contributors for that, and you can see some other great Zodiac content on the Zodiac Killer channel. And yes, there will be a part 4 of Obsession into Darkness at some point in the future. And for now, let's get back to the show. Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back. When looking at Michael Cole's book and theories on the Zodiac Killer, going into this, I only knew maybe 3 things off the top of my head. As I said, I learned about this on Drew Beeson's show, This Oddcast, and then he recommended the book. But prior to reading it, what I would be able to tell you is that Number one, he isn't going to identify a single suspect, but instead talk about what the Zodiac killer or perpetrator in any of these murders would have been like. As we said, talking about some aspects of the personality and aspects of this individual's lifestyle. And the second is that he was going to look at many different possible alleged Zodiac incidents and say that, yes, indeed, this is all the same person. And the third is that the individual behind this would have had celestial navigation training. And Drew Beeson's suspect in the Zodiac Killer mystery, Donald Lee Cheney, had celestial navigation training, although I think he had a different name for it. The thing that he learned had a different name, but it was that celestial navigation training. And in the very early parts of Michael Cole's book, he talks about something that is mentioned every so often in the Zodiac Killer mystery, and that is that the perpetrator in these crimes was most likely someone who was either in the Navy or in the Air Force, Navy or Air Force. And they say that in the Air Force because they found wing walker boot prints at Lake Berryessa, which were most likely a size 10.5. Lake Berryessa is also equidistant to Mount Diablo, as is Travis Air Force Base, and Mount Diablo was where the Zodiac said to put the radian, the angle of 57.29 degrees, and showing that it's all matching up with, as we would say, mathematical signatures, if you will, and that you might be dealing with someone who's either in the Navy or the Air Force. Definitely someone who has a type of military connection. Not all Zodiac's killer suspects were in the military, mind you, but this is something that has been explored, and people do bring it up that a person who would have had these familiarities with the angles like radians. Someone even wrote into the channel once and just said pilots and sailors have familiarity with radians, or they would be using them. And when you hear that stuff about celestial navigation training, it sounds like a convincing case that you're dealing with someone who was either in the Navy or the Air Force. And if I had to make a choice right now, I would probably say that this person was in the Air Force, but that doesn't mean that I have any certainty of that. That would be just if I had to make a decision on the spot. Now, in regards, though, to Don Chaney as a Zodiac killer suspect and how he would fit into the Michael Cole theory, Don Chaney was someone who knew the reporter Paul Avery when he went to Bakersfield Junior College and they put on a production of The Mikado. Paul Avery was very involved with all of the student services at Bakersfield Junior College. And with that, I'd say that's Drew Beeson's big contribution to the Zodiac Killer mystery. He learned about the link between Don Chaney and Paul Avery. Don Chaney, of course, goes on to become a Zodiac Killer suspect, but he's more famous for being the friend of Arthur Lee Allen, former friend, we should say, who really wanted to get Arthur Lee Allen blamed for being the Zodiac Killer. He is mentioned numerous times in the writings of Robert Graysmith, and when we did our book discussion on Zodiac Unmasked by Graysmith, I was even just saying, it's so weird that Graysmith is just bringing up this individual named Don Chaney who's just providing these hearsay testimonies about, oh yeah, this is what Arthur Lee Allen told me about the Zodiac Killer mystery, or not necessarily about the Zodiac Killer, but just saying that he likes the name Zodiac or that he's talking about slaves in the afterlife and such. He's just providing these hearsay testimonials from Don Chaney, and I'm like, well, how do we know this guy's telling the truth or not? I mean, he's just some guy who claims that he knew Arthur Lee Allen, and he did. I mean, that's not disputed, but Don Chaney's credibility and all of these things, I mean, what certification would any true crime writer have to present to put this in a book? And it's like, it is all hearsay in the most absolute form. But when we look at Don Chaney as a suspect, and you can see this connection to Paul Avery, Michael Cole really looks at the connection to Paul Avery from whoever mailed the Halloween card. There's a very big section in the book about this, and some people were even perceiving this as a death threat to Paul Avery, because Paul Avery is writing a lot of things about the Zodiac Killer, and he's like Thomas Henry Horror Newman once referred to him as the Zodiac's publicist. He's like, first Avery starts out by writing articles questioning the legitimacy of the Zodiac Killer mystery. Then he has a reversal, and then he just becomes the Zodiac Killer's publicist. And they believe that there's this Halloween card that was mailed, I want to say October 27th of 1970, but that's the date that I always forget. And there's the number 14 that has been written on it. And some people believe that this individual who was behind all of these murders had actually murdered 13 people to date, and you can see the 13 eyes that are on the Halloween card, and then it says 14, meaning that this person is planning to murder the 14th victim. And Michael Cole, even though he attributes many different murders to the Zodiac Killer, he is also someone who is skeptical of the Zodiac's boastful nature, because, as he says, the Zodiac has been caught lying in the past, and this is also someone who wanted to overinflate their ideas, overinflate their personality, overinflate the body count, overinflate anything. It's like a braggadocio, for lack of a better term. This person is really trying to make themselves seem more deadly than they actually are. If everything that we've gone down the pathway of a single perpetrator theory is correct, and many people do believe that. As we said, there are other theories out there. There's the Zodiac hoax theory, there are the multiple killers theory, that that's actually a group of people, and then there are also other possibilities that it's like a partnership, which was a variant of the group murder theory in itself, but I think you can get the idea that some people believe that more than one individual was involved with even the Zodiac canonical crimes. I'm not even convinced about that, and I mean, I may have talked more about the multiple killers theory minute by minute than anybody else on YouTube. But if you're looking at one person committing all of these murders, then I have to look at some of the other claims that Michael Cole is making, because he has an image in his book where he's talking about, he says that he just refers to the incident as Gaviota very frequently. The murders of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, June 4th, 1963. Then February 5th is 1964 in San Diego. There are the murders of the Swindles, Johnny Ray Swindle and Joyce Swindle. And I believe that they were shot from a long range distance. Many people do believe that the Zodiac Killer had some good marksmanship skills, mind you. Then in Benicia, we have the murders of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. That's at Lake Herman Road. Mike Mageau and Darlene Ferrin were shot in Vallejo on July 4th, 1969. That's Mike Mageau is surviving, of course, but the murder of Darlene Ferrin, Mike Mageau is still alive to this day. At the time of this recording, September 27th, we have the Lake Berryessa stabbing, where Brian Hartnell would survive, but Cecilia Shepard would pass away 2 days later in the hospital. And I thought it was interesting that he noted that the Zodiac Killer was carrying a 45, and no bullets were fired. I mean, like the Zodiac didn't fire any shots at Lake Berryessa. He stabbed the victims. What he provides for an explanation about that is Brian Hartnell, as the surviving victim, had a good look at the gun. And if you watch David Fincher's film Zodiac, and you can even see that they recreate the scene. That clip is played in Obsession into Darkness Part 3, mind you, if you'd like to watch that with some commentary on the Zodiac Killer YouTube channel. And you can see that he is showing the gun to Brian Hartnell. Brian asked multiple times, is that gun loaded? People are going to ask, was that thing really loaded? And he pulls out the magazine clip, and Brian Hartnell looks at that, and so he had a very clear view of that, and he believes that that was a 45 caliber handgun. And then the murder of Paul Stein on October 11th of 1969. It says that here in Michael Cole's book that Paul Stein was shot with a 9mm. I always thought that Paul Stein was shot with a 38, and then on June 19th, 1970, Richard Redditch is shot with a 38. But no matter what handgun, no matter what handgun Paul Stein was shot with, those are the crimes in the Zodiac Killer mystery. And you can see that these are things that Michael Cole is saying were all committed by the same perpetrator, as well as the stabbing of Sherry Jo Bates, the attempted abduction of Kathleen Johns, and perhaps some other crimes as well. He is saying that many different things were committed by the same individual, and this is all a criminal masterpiece, but also dealing with someone who has some very intense mental instability. Now, I said something in the first part of the segment, like in the first segment, that we would talk about the 408 cipher and the misspellings. And while we said a lot of things about the 408 cipher, to mention the misspellings, Michael Cole gets into this type of material a lot because he is showing that, number one, the Zodiac Killer most likely knew how to spell. I believe that the Zodiac Killer knew how to spell and that the misspellings are intentional. But I think he's actually saying something that is much more reminiscent of the claims made by Gary Stewart and Steve Hodel. I almost said Earl Van Best and Steve Hodel. No, but Gary Stewart is one of the individuals who pushes Earl Van Best as a suspect. Earl Van Best's own biological son. He wrote the book The Most Dangerous Animal of All, yeah, by Gary Stewart and Susan Mustafa. And Steve Hodel, of course, wrote his book Most Evil Part 2, talking about George Hill Hodel. Also, actually, both those guys are accusing their biological father of being the Zodiac Killer. But what they simply said is that the misspellings in the Zodiac Killer mystery are intentional. They are not very meaningful. They're just meant to be confusing. And they're also, it's the same thing, though, about what we said about hiding and not giving the truth and personal meaning. I mean, maybe they do have something very, very similar or very, very significant to the individual, but unless you actually sit down with the person and they tell you that, it would be impossible to decipher, or unless you just got lucky. Or, like, as Gareth Penn would say, it's not Sherlock, it's sheer luck. But I definitely think that there is that element going on, but Michael Cole would expand upon that by saying this is another element of the person who wants to be confusing, to have the private knowledge. Like, people are going to be guessing about this, and yeah, it's going to be fueling his own excitement. Haha, you're going to be questioning my own misspellings. But the person is also disguising their writing by adding in these misspellings that do not have a whole lot of meaning. but by being weird and unconventional, it creates a form of excitement for the individual, and it's also showing things that are confusing, so people can't really figure out what he is all about, and that creates a layer of security. As we said, someone who is very insecure, low in neuroticism, but very insecure, and the misspellings are just a continuation of that process. The Zodiac Killer knew how to spell. For a long time, people were exploring the possibility that the Zodiac Killer was someone who was not very educated, but very well read. Someone who was familiar with an enormous amount of books, and we can spend like an hour just going through numerous literary references in the Zodiac Killer mystery. But I would actually like to add one thing that I learned about from Michael Cole, and that is that there are even references to Herman Melville and Moby Dick. And when the Zodiac Killer was taunting Melvin Belli, I believe he wrote something like "Melvin eats blubber" or something like that, and it was a taunt to Melvin Belli. Or that message is going around, and what that is it's actually a paraphrase of Melville eats blubber, like Herman Melville, Captain Ahab looking for the white whale, Moby Dick, and it's like even that becomes a literary reference. But I think that in regards to the Halloween card being a death threat to Paul Avery, or bragging about the number of victims that were committed, I would recommend that everybody watch the video from Skating Crow Productions on the Halloween card and the references that are found to T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. And the host of that channel really goes into an excellent presentation using agonizing detail. We have mentioned that in a previous AMA. I don't have it all memorized. I wish I could, but there's even a line in there that says, like, leaving a taxi, waiting and throbbing, and talking about how the Zodiac Killer was using T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland as a playbook. And I couldn't accept that based on the presentation that I saw, but I think that, of course, there would be other literary references that would be very influential. And, I mean, as well as comics for Tim Holt, Red Rider, we have those already. That's how we got the Wheel of Death, and that, odd-looking symbol that is on the Halloween card. Of course, they can be used in their own ways and such, but the point is that the Zodiac was heavily influenced by literature, and we can add Herman Melville and Moby Dick into this, also Joseph Conrad and the Secret Agent, The Most Dangerous Game, which we've been talking about throughout the duration of the recording, and Gareth Penn also brings up some things about just other forms of poetry, meaning that I think we're dealing with someone who is rather well educated and not only familiar with an enormous amount of mathematics and familiar with things like radians, as well as just familiarity with either being a pilot or a sailor, but also with the understanding of complicated works of literature and so on. Okay, and we'll be right back after this. Bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum bum bum. At this time, I would like to remind everybody about YouTube Premium. If you use the YouTube Premium features, you can download Black Box Online Radio, take it on the go, out walking, in the car, anywhere and anyhow. YouTube Premium also gives you access to special YouTube original shows and YouTube music. And now, let's get back to the episode. Okay, hello, and we are back once again. At this time, I would like to give some concluding notes for the episode, and I need to re-emphasize the point that this entire episode that you've been listening to has been coming after reading about 2/3 of Michael Cole's book, Zodiac Revisited, Volume 3. Now, that means we will most likely have a follow-up or some type of larger conclusion once I reach the end of the book. But my big takeaway from this book is actually something for myself that I need to be more open-minded to, extending the range of the Zodiac Killer outside of just the canonical crimes. I've been very dismissive of the Sherry Jo Bates murder in 1966, as well as the abduction of Kathleen Johns. And if anything, Michael Cole has provided some good reasons, I believe, about why he believes that the Bates murder was genuine Zodiac activity. And, I mean, some of the points that stood out involve the confession letter, as well as also the fact that you do have these similarities, which is a little bit more than just, as we said, the Graysmith progression about Sherry Jo Bates and attempted abduction, and then the other attempted abduction of Kathleen Johns in in 1970 saying that, okay, this is totally normal for the Zodiac killer to do that. Instead, what he brought up the point was that the the person who was dealing with Kathleen Johns in 1970 tampered with her car, and this is the attempted abduction off of Highway Route 132. When he says that he driving by says that her wheel is loose, she pulls over and he examines that, and then determines that he needs to work with it, but he's actually loosening the bolts even more, and then she starts to drive, and then the wheel falls off, and he says, "Oh, it's much worse than I thought," and the attempted abduction of Kathleen Johns. But a similarity with Kathleen Johns and Sherry Jo Bates is you both have someone tampering with somebody's vehicle. That whole thing from the confession letter about removing the distributor coil, it shows that someone tampered with Sherry Jo Bates' car, and I said I would provide a little bit more background information. I'm sure everybody is familiar with the Riverside Confession, but there was a typed confession letter that was mailed in after the murder of Sherry Jo Bates that said she was beautiful, but now she is battered and dead. I removed the distributor coil from her car, and also saying Miss Bates went to the slaughter like a lamb. And another point that is mentioned by Michael Cole in the book is that I mean, I don't want to go off on a tangent too harshly, but he says that it's possible that the Zodiac killer was making a biblical reference with that, and even identified a specific biblical passage, a Bible passage that is. So it's possible that he was a practicing Christian, but I still have to stand by my claim that I don't believe that the Zodiac genuinely believed any spirituality other than his own ego. So then, but that shows that tampering with automobiles is something that is present in both the Bates murder and the attempted abduction of Kathleen Johns. I'm not sold on it. I really have to say that I've always been dismissive of a lot of these claims because I found that people are perhaps stretching the truth, or there's a little bit of wild imagination that goes on with people who want to say that they have found not only the Zodiac killer, but also they found a suspect that is this massive serial killer who has been going around the entire world committing all these crimes. In many instances, you find that the person who's putting forward their theory is not lying. They're not saying things that they don't believe are true. They believe them to be true, but it's also about taking the real facts and maybe adding in some fictitious connections. But the reason why I said, though, that I need to be more open-minded is some people have very good explanations for this, and I think that Michael Cole is really trying to show about how you would have someone who is using multiple personas, if you will. And I bring up BTK all the time because BTK called it cubing. He put a name for it. Like when you go to church, you need to act like a churchgoer. When you go to work, you need to act like a worker. When you're out killing people, you need to act like a serial murderer. It's called cubing. Like it's not just about having two different sides of a personality, but instead up to 12 different actions and functions. And this is even mentioned in Bret Easton Ellis's novel American Psycho. You know, they made the movie with Christian Bale when he says, "But really, I'm not there." And I didn't understand that when I saw it for the first time at age 22, but I can comprehend that more now after looking at some things about serial killers. It's just playing different parts, and there's no real conscience or empathy. And I'd say, as a concluding note, that he has sold me on that the Zodiac killer would have been a stone-cold sociopath. Also, another point that he has sold me on is that the Zodiac could have had a strict religious upbringing. And if you even look at the 340 cipher, you can see at the beginning it says her and something that looks like the word God, a strict religious upbringing. And it's possible that when we say practicing Christian, that the Zodiac or the murder of Sherry Jo Bates, if you're going to entertain his theory, and even if anyone who's going to entertain that Bates was a genuine Zodiac victim, that the person who murdered her was a practicing Christian at the time, not a genuine believer. I cannot accept that, but I would say that maybe someone who is going to church or is someone who is going to Bible study groups is an action that is used to continue the facade. But another point that I'm completely sold on from Michael Cole is one that I think we were in agreement with from the beginning, that this person is doing this to fuel their own narcissistic tendencies and their own narcissistic desires. And there's a starve for attention. There's this starve for recognition and notoriety and just demanding that people recognize the intelligence of the person who's behind all of this. Because no matter what theory you're going down, like we've said things about the hoax theory, the multiple killers theory, I personally believe that there was one central planning mind behind all of this. Like one person is the architect of this. Now, how did that fall into play and how does that go into motion? I'm not even able to tell you right now about like who would be all the deciding factors. And I think that it's valuable to have books out there like Michael Cole's The Zodiac Revisited Volume 3, when he's not so much getting hunkered down on a suspect and saying, okay, this is my guy, and I'm going to make these theories fit this particular person. Instead, it's more like, okay, here are the materials that we have from the letters, from the confessions, and here are mathematical clues, and here are things that this person could have learned in their life. And I mean, the amount of clues that we have from literature and mathematics is really astounding without being able to identify a single perpetrator in everything. But rather, I think that we do have someone who is insecure, but they're hiding behind this veil of confusion. Like they're getting off on making people not being able to understand them, and through that, no one can ever truly criticize who this person is. No one can truly criticize what this person genuinely believed because there's so many things in the Zodiac Killer mystery that are false, such as as we said, the misspellings. That's the big one there. They might not have any significant meaning, but you can't criticize someone if you can't understand them. And also, you would have the things about the lying about the body count, mailing in puzzling messages like the Halloween card. People are still debating about the meaning of these things to this day, let alone the Z32 and the Z13 cipher. There are lots of taunts. There are lots of there's lots of bragging going on, but it's done in a very bizarre way, and that person is totally getting off on the ability to have the private knowledge, whereas other people do not. And the final thing I would say is, I think we've answered that question about why would somebody write letters to newspapers at all, or why would there be deviations from the Chronicle to the Examiner? I mean, some people would just look at that and be like, okay, this person's writing very frequently to the San Francisco Chronicle because it's the newspaper they're the most familiar with. And then, okay, they're also familiar with the Examiner and the Vallejo Times-Herald. That's why they're contacting them. And it's a very large connection to, I mean, it's a very large cycle that happens with murderers. As we said, the murder of Sherry Jo Bates also mailed in letters. There are multiple copies of the letter that says Bates had to die. There will be more, and there's the Riverside Confession letter. And I mean, I'm just going off of memory here, so I may be mistaken about this, but I want to say that the Bates confession letter was mailed to 3 different people, but one of them was sent to the Riverside Daily Enterprise, and that it was sent to a newspaper. Killers did that. The Black Dahlia Avenger also wrote in letters to the newspapers, and that's going back to the 1940s. And Steve Hodel has a lot of things to say about that in his books, and you can also hear more things on Steve Hodel's YouTube channel. I've just subscribed to that one since I've been exploring some things there, as I said, with the murder of Lucilla LaLue. But in conclusion, I would say that the driving force seems to be insecurity, narcissism, sociopathy, feeling rejected from society, but also going about it in a very vengeful way. The concept of being resentful, but not channeling resent into any way that could actually improve this person's life, instead harboring resent and then unleashing it in a very destructive way because this person thought that they can do it without getting caught. When there is no fear of pain or punishment, this person is doing some very destructive things. And that is true even if you accept things like the multiple killers theory or the hoax theory, because it's all comes from the same origin, that this is the driving force. Well, that's all I have to say now about that. Thank you to everyone who's listened to this. Thank you to Drew Beeson for recommending this book to me. And thank you to everyone who has checked out the YouTube channel as well as the Instagram page, BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram. You can also write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. Thank you to Michael Cole for all of his material that I've been discussing here and referencing. I've been trying to differentiate between his stuff as well as the things that I learned about from Todd Grande and Douglas Oswell and any of the other Zodiac theorists. We also said Gary Stewart and Steve Hodel. Thank you to everyone who has provided some source material for this show, and I will see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.